They didn't even pretend to grieve. I heard it with my own ears from a nurse's phone left on speaker.
They didn't even pretend to grieve. I heard it with my own ears 2 floors down from a nurse's phone left on speaker. My daughter's voice, bright, almost giddy, cut through the hospital corridor. Mom's plane crashed. Finally, we can sell everything. Then a laugh. Sharp, relieved, triumphant, like a long-term illness finally cured. As if I hadn't spent decades building the house she grew up in, cooking her school lunches, co-signing her first car loan. As if I hadn't been her mother at all. I lay in the hospital bed, body shattered, ribs fractured like old china, lungs stitched together by machines. The nurse didn't know I was awake. She had set her phone down unattended on the counter while grabbing clean linens. I shouldn't have heard it, but I did. And once you hear your child rejoice in your supposed death, there is no unhearing it. They brought me in under the name Jane Doe because my purse and ID had been stolen during the evacuation. The manifest listed me as missing, presumed dead. It makes things easier, the nurse had said. Less pressure from family? I didn't correct her. I couldn't, not with a punctured lung and a face swollen beyond recognition. They didn't know who I was, and for a moment neither did I. The plane had gone down in a ravine near the Canadian border. Out of 121 passengers, 87 had died instantly. I wasn't one of them. I had survived in a row torn off during descent, wedged between a tree and an icy ledge. Rescuers had pulled me out hours later, unconscious, bleeding, blue with cold. A miracle, the doctor said, but all I felt was pain, and then I heard her voice. Pain became something else entirely. Her name is Candace. She used to call me mommy, then mom, then nothing at all unless she needed money. I had given her the down payment for her first condo, paid for Bree's private kindergarten, covered credit card debt after her divorce. She never said thank you, not really, just told me I was generous, as if I were a foundation, not a person. I don't know what shocked me more, that she thought I was dead or that she celebrated it. That night in the darkened hospital room, I stared at the ceiling and counted tiles. 23, then again, 23. I couldn't stop shaking. My body hurt, but my soul ached worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her 12-year-old face brushing against mine before school, small hands warm against my cheek. Where had that child gone? A man came the next morning. Suit, tie, polished shoes that didn't belong in the scuffed linoleum hallway. He said he was from the airline. I could barely speak. My mouth moved, but no sound came. He smiled anyway, like I had already agreed to whatever he was offering. We're offering settlements, he said, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. Undisclosed amounts, time sensitive. He didn't know I was the woman no one was frantically searching for. No vigil, no social media posts, no daughter calling hospitals in panic. Just silence. Later, the nurse told me that Candace had already listed my house. Photos of the living room where I had held her during thunderstorms, the backyard where we planted daffodils when she was 6, the kitchen where we celebrated birthdays. She had called it an outdated fixer-upper. My home, my life. There are many kinds of death. One is the body. The other is realizing you are no longer needed, not as a person, but as property. I lay in that bed, staring at the ceiling, the pattern of fluorescent lights reflected in my swollen eyes, and made a decision. I would not tell them I was alive. Not yet. I would watch, I would wait. Pain became strategy. Survival became choice. The hospital room was cold, antiseptic, and strangely quiet now, save for the faint beep of a monitor. I flexed my fingers, weak, trembling, but alive. Every breath hurt, every pulse was a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still a threat to their plans. I thought of the home I built, of the life I had poured into raising her. Every memory they treated like an asset, every sacrifice they counted as an investment, not love. I closed my eyes and let anger settle like a stone in my chest. I was invisible, yes, forgotten in their eyes, but not powerless. I would heal first, slowly, deliberately, let my body knit itself back together before I became something they couldn't touch. I would recover in silence, watch from the shadows, and when the time came, I would remind them that I existed, not as a tax write-off, not as collateral, but as a mother, as a person. And I would take back what was mine. Outside, the wind rattled the hospital window. Snow had turned to rain, the landscape dark and wet. A day like any other, and yet everything had shifted. I was a ghost in my own life, a phantom waiting to step out of the shadows. I counted the tiles again. 23, not just a number now, but a promise. 23 reminders that I had survived, and 23 reasons I would not disappear quietly. For now, they would believe me dead, but soon, very soon, they would remember, because death isn't always the end. Sometimes it is only the beginning. I let the man in the suit return the next morning, and this time I asked questions about compensation, about the process, about my rights as a deceased passenger who wasn't actually deceased. My jaw ached whenever I spoke. I had lost a tooth in the crash, but I still had enough resolve to sit upright and meet his gaze. 3 weeks later, when I could finally sit without the room spinning, they gave me a mirror. The woman staring back looked like she had crawled out of the wreckage of her entire life. Bruises spread like ink across her cheekbones, hair matted and gray at the roots, wrinkles sharper than I remembered. But my eyes, those were still mine. They had been through childbirth, betrayal, widowhood, and bankruptcy, and they weren't finished yet. June Mallow, I whispered to my reflection, you're still here. Still here, and yet nowhere, no obituary, no funeral. No daughter calling hospitals or demanding answers. Just a real estate listing with my home slapped onto the market and a voice saying, finally. That's when planning began, not revenge. No, something colder, steadier, justice. The kind that didn't need shouting, only patience. Once I could walk a few steps, they moved me to a quieter wing. The nurses were kind in the way people are when they expect you to disappear after discharge, gentle, helpful, but emotionally detached. They called me Miss Doe and brought warm broth. None asked why no one had come for me. No one wanted the burden of knowing. I didn't volunteer it. The doctor called me a slow miracle. A nurse added, most wouldn't have made it through the second night. But I didn't feel miraculous. I felt stubborn. There's a difference. Toughness fights. Stubbornness endures. I had spent my entire life enduring. After 6 more weeks, they released me into a rehabilitation center, gray walls, overenthusiastic volunteers, and soft hymns drifting from the common room every Sunday. I stayed another month relearning the simplest things, cutting food, climbing 2 steps, shampooing my own hair. I worked harder than they realized, harder than I let them see. The silence gave me room to think. And the best part, no one came asking questions. On paper, I was dead. Authorities had misidentified a charred body at the crash site as me. The dental records matched only because I hadn't updated mine in over 15 years. A clerical error, the kind that shouldn't happen but always does when no one is looking closely, especially when no loved one is pushing for a second check. Candace hadn't pushed. She accepted my death in less than 48 hours. The moment she signed the confirmation form, she scheduled a celebration of life brunch, no casket, no grief, just sandwiches and a slideshow. She probably wore a pastel dress and smiled politely while the room pretended to care. And she listed my house 2 days after the crash. Charming, well-loved home with vintage appeal. The real estate agent's words felt like a punch. Candace had called it old-fashioned for years. My lawyer, Marvin, reached out to her regarding probate, and she responded almost instantly, eager, impatient, practically begging for updates. She wasn't mourning. She was racing. Little did she know I had updated my will long before the accident. Nothing was automatic. Nothing belonged to her. Then one afternoon, the hospital forwarded a sealed envelope from the airline's legal team. Inside was a settlement offer. $18 million. In exchange for silence, no interviews, no lawsuits, no public statements. They wanted my survival buried. I read the figure several times. No tears, no smile. Just a quiet acknowledgement that fate had handed me the kind of leverage Candace would never see coming. Candace used to say I was bad with money, too cautious, too frugal. She mocked my old car and homemade lunches. She called it a scarcity mindset. I called it survival. Now I was holding more wealth than she had ever dreamt of, and none of it would go to her. There was only one person I trusted, my lawyer, Marvin. The only one who ever asked how I was doing without expecting a check afterward. I called him from the rehab center. He didn't scream when he heard my voice, he just sat in stunned silence before whispering. June, where are you? Alive, I said, which is more than I can say for my reputation. We met 2 days later in a borrowed office. I wore sunglasses and a scarf not to hide, just to shield myself from the strange, too bright world that had moved on without me. I want you to accept the settlement, I told him, but I want control of every cent. He nodded, and Candace gets nothing, not now, not ever. Another nod. I want a trust set up for Bree. She gets access at 30 only if she's financially independent from her mother. Marvin raised an eyebrow. That's strict. It's necessary. Finally, I added, and I want time, a year, no obituary, no announcement, no closure. Delay everything? He studied me carefully. You're planning something? No, I said. I've simply stopped pretending. The next morning, I checked myself out, took a cab 3 hours away, and rented a modest apartment under a new name. June Emerson, new shoes, a dark coat, a used car with squeaky brakes. I didn't look like a woman worth $18 million. I looked like a woman with nothing left to lose and nothing tying her down anymore. The first time I saw my house again, I felt something inside me twist, not grief, not shock, but a hollowing. A kind of quiet undoing. I parked behind a delivery van across the street and stayed hidden, watching what used to be my home as if it were a stranger's. And in many ways, it was. The hydrangeas I planted the spring after Walter died, the ones he'd teased me for babying, were gone, dug up, replaced with a cold spread of decorative stones that looked like they belonged outside a bank. The lawn had been stripped into artificial turf, the kind that stays unnervingly green no matter the season. Even the wind chime that Bree made in second grade, seashells and fishing line, clacking like soft applause in the breeze, had vanished from the porch. But the worst was the sign staked into the dirt, under contract. My breath caught, not because I didn't expect it, but because expecting a wound never makes it hurt less. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, as a young couple toured the front steps like they were strolling through a showroom. The man pointed up at the roof, making some comment. The woman laughed, already imagining her own life unfolding where mine used to. It was strange, watching strangers admire the bones of a life they knew nothing about. And there, behind them, was Candace, my daughter. Standing in a tailored white blazer, hair smoothed back, face lit with that polished, professional smile she always practiced in the car mirror when she wanted to look successful. She didn't look like someone who had lost her mother 6 weeks ago. She looked like someone who had just closed a profitable deal. When they stepped inside, I stayed in the car. I don't know what I was waiting for, maybe a flicker of recognition from the house itself. Maybe some ghost of my old life leaning against the windowsill. But the place felt too clean, too staged, too swiftly stripped of me. That night, back in my small apartment, the one with plain walls and a mattress still smelling of plastic, I opened the secure laptop Marvin had given me. A new identity had come with new devices, new folders, new access. Inside the private folder were copies of every email Candace had sent to the estate attorney she assumed was handling her inheritance. I clicked through them slowly. Photos of my furniture attached with brief captions. Do we sell this? Can the movers take this? The old stuff can go. She didn't even call them mom's things. One appraisal message read, most items too worn for resale. Recommend disposal. Disposal. My cedar chest, my mother's cedar chest, the one that held every letter I'd ever written, every photograph I'd ever tucked away, reduced to trash in a typed sentence. I closed the laptop. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Candace didn't just want my assets. She wanted the space where I used to exist. 3 days later, I went back, not to interfere, not to confront, but to see who she was when she believed I was safely dead. It was a Thursday, gray and warm, the kind of weather that makes the world feel heavy. From the corner cafe, I watched Candace pull up in her silver Audi. She made a phone call, sipped a green smoothie, crossed her legs. Everything about her radiated impatience, ambition, image. Minutes later, Bree climbed into the passenger seat. Sweet Bree, my granddaughter. Older now, shoulders slumped from teenage uncertainty, but wearing that same crooked smile she used to give me when she'd sneak extra cookies after dinner. They barely spoke. Candace gestured sharply, talking fast, the tone she used whenever she wanted someone to agree before they had time to think. Bree just nodded, eyes drifting toward the window, lost somewhere far away. They drove to a storage facility and I followed at a careful distance. I watched them unload boxes. Candace checked items off a clipboard, Bree carried silently, dutifully. Inside the trunk, I saw a ceramic horse figurine, the one Walter gave me for our 5th anniversary. When the box shifted, it tipped, rolled, and disappeared behind the others. Candace didn't even notice. After they left, I waited until the manager disappeared inside, then walked toward the dumpster. There, among splintered wood and wadded packing paper, I saw it, my wedding photo. The frame cracked, the glass fractured cleanly through the middle, a fault line slicing straight across Walter's smiling face. I lifted it with both hands gently as if it still held life. I didn't cry. The grief was too old for tears now. What filled me instead was quiet, precise. She wasn't just clearing out a house. She was erasing me. Back in my car, the photo resting beside me like a wounded friend, I dialed Marvin. "She's thrown everything away," I said. "Everything that made me me." There was silence on his end, not shock, not judgment, just understanding. "What do you want to do next?" he asked. I looked at the cracked glass, at the half-smile frozen beneath it. "I want to watch," I said softly. "I want to see the life she builds on my grave, and when the right moment comes," my voice steadied, "I'll let her see me alive." The law has its own rhythm, slow, deliberate, indifferent to human grief. But unlike grief, it never wavers, never forgets, and never allows shortcuts. Candace learned that the hard way. 5 weeks after the crash, she filed a petition for full transfer of my estate. In the paperwork, she wrote that there were no surviving next of kin, as if I had sprung into existence fully grown, without ever wiping her tears in the grocery store parking lot or sewing her Halloween costumes the night before school parades. Marvin, discreet as fog, began slowing the process piece by piece. He didn't reject her filings outright, no, that would alert her. Instead, he delayed them with strategic softness. A form missing a signature, a request for verification, a question about the coroner's report, a clerical discrepancy that needed further clarification. Each obstruction landed like a pebble dropped into water, small ripples, but they added up. Candace switched lawyers twice. Fired the first, hired a more aggressive second, then grew impatient with him too. Meanwhile, she spent money she didn't yet possess. The house sold quickly. The funds, what she believed would be her inheritance, moved through her hands like water. She bought herself a new studio space, a glass-walled modern office with minimalist furniture and a brass plaque that read, CANDACE Lifestyle Curation and Design Lifestyle Curation. I thought the first time I saw it. A rebrand that erased the fact that, for years, she'd only met bank deadlines because I quietly transferred money into her account. She marketed herself as self-made now, self-made on my savings, self-made on my survival. Most days, Bree helped her unpack daycare, arrange displays, hang sample boards. She worked with a quiet diligence that was the opposite of her mother's showmanship. From across the street, I watched her unopened expressions, the way her shoulders tensed when Candace spoke too sharply, the way she took up less space than she should have. One morning, I followed Bree after she left the studio. She walked alone, earbuds in, backpack slung over one shoulder. She stopped at a bookstore I used to take her to when she was small, the one with crooked aisles and coffee-scented air. I entered after her, staying behind a tall magazine rack. She moved down the aisles slowly, her fingers brushing the spines as if greeting old friends. Then she sank cross-legged into the corner of the fiction section, absorbed instantly by a paperback. Her brow softened, her shoulders relaxed. She looked like the child who once fell asleep on my rug with a chapter book open across her chest. I watched her for nearly 10 minutes. I shouldn't have. It hurt too much. Not because she looked sad, but because she looked alone. I left before she could look up. I wasn't ready to face her, not the questions in her eyes, not the pain she didn't yet understand. I wasn't ready to be alive in her world again. Later that week, Marvin called. "She's filing pressure motions," he said. "Her attorney is demanding release of funds. We've stalled as long as possible." "How long do we have?" I asked. "A few more weeks. Maybe less. She's running out of time," I murmured. "Yes," he said quietly. "Good." That night I made a list, not of tasks, not of revenge, of truths. Candace did not cry when she was told I was dead. She did not call hospitals. She did not wait for confirmation. She immediately listed the house. She disposed of my belongings. She rewrote the narrative of her life without me in it. She never once asked Bri how she felt. That last one, number 7, was the one that mattered. Money could be replaced, a house could be sold. But love ignored leaves a wound that only grows, and Bree, she still wore the silver locket I'd given her on her 13th birthday. The one with the tiny photo of Walter and me inside. She touched it often when she was young, during exams, before piano recitals, in moments when she needed courage. She still wore it now. That meant something. On Sunday morning, I returned to the old neighborhood. The young couple who bought my house had moved in. The porch had a new welcome mat, new wind chimes, cheaper ones, thin and high-pitched. The curtains were wrong. The flowers were wrong. The whole house looked like a stranger wearing my clothes. I stood across the street for a long time, not longing for what was mine, but remembering who I used to be. Then I walked 4 blocks to the cafe where Candace often held her brunch meetings. She was there, as predictable as weather, white blazer, large sunglasses, a laugh too loud and too polished to be real. Her gestures were sharp, her smile wide, her grief non-existent. I sat at the counter, ordered tea, watched her. This, I thought, is what a woman looks like when she believes the game is over. But she hadn't seen the board yet. And she had no idea a missing piece had returned, alive, breathing, watching. By the time I stood to leave, the decision was carved into me like stone. I wouldn't confront her in anger. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't demand anything. I would walk into her gleaming office, stand where she could see me, let her recognize the face she buried in paperwork, let her watch her victory crumble in silence. Because nothing is more terrifying than a ghost who refuses to stay dead. The receptionist didn't recognize me when I walked into the office. That suited me fine. I didn't need anyone's recognition. I didn't need permission. I was here on my own terms. The lobby gleamed in sterile perfection, white marble floors polished to a reflective shine, brushed gold accents on the counters, and an aroma of expensive, unscented soap lingering in the air. Minimalism screamed wealth in the right way. Quiet, controlled, and unapproachable. On the wall, a single black and white photograph of Candace herself, arms crossed, chin tilted, eyes narrowed in carefully curated confidence. The picture felt like a warning. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked. "Yes," I said evenly, keeping my tone neutral. "Tell Miss Mallow her 10 o'clock is here." The receptionist hesitated, fingers hovering over the phone. "I don't have anything at 10. "She'll want to see me," I said. There was no hesitation in my voice, just the quiet authority of someone who already had what the other person wanted to take for granted. A pause on the line. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Fine," Candace said. "Send her in." Of course she didn't meet me at the door. That would have been too easy. Candace waited behind her glass desk, queen of a tiny, gleaming kingdom. Her eyes flicked over me like I was a client she'd hoped wouldn't show up, a problem she'd prefer to erase. Then her expression cracked, then froze. She blinked twice, and in that frozen beat I saw her fear. I closed the door behind me. No one else needed to witness this. "Hello, Candace," I said. She didn't speak, not a word, just stared. "You look well," I added, deliberately calm. "Though I don't imagine the same can be said for your conscience." That snapped her. The ice hardened over her features like glass on a frozen pond. "What is this?" she whispered. "What, how?" "I survived," I said simply. She stared, disbelief making her mouth twitch. "No one called me," she murmured. "No one said, no one called," I agreed, "because no one tried." She rose abruptly, chair scraping against the polished floor. The sound reverberated across the empty office. "What are you doing here? Why would you? Why now?" "To see how quickly you swept me out of your life," I said, voice quiet but precise. "I thought you were dead," she burst. Her tone wavered between accusation and panic. "Yes," I said. "That was convenient for you, wasn't it?" Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, searching for something to say that wouldn't come. I looked around the office, spotless, sterile, curated. Every corner, every vase, every chair screamed her version of control. "You sold the house 2 months after the crash," I said. "Donated my furniture, threw away my wedding album. Moved into this glass box. You told people you'd built everything on your own." "I mourned you," she insisted, though her voice was hollow, thin as tissue. "I did, I didn't know what else to do." "No," I said softly. "You didn't mourn, you prepared." Silence descended, heavy and sharp. "You weren't supposed to be on that flight," she blurted, suddenly leaning forward, her hands gripping the desk. "You changed plans, no one knew. Not even Bri? I left a voicemail the night before," I said. "You never called back." She looked down, shame and panic mingling in a quiet storm behind her eyes. "You assumed," I continued, stepping closer. "Assumed the story would be easy, that I'd conveniently died and left you the pieces to arrange however you liked. You don't know what it's been like," she snapped. "This last year." "Oh, I do," I interrupted. Her eyes widened. "Because I watched it. I've been here, in this city, this entire time. I've seen the house, the parties, the clients, the brunches. I've seen the speeches about reinvention and rising from grief. You didn't erase me, Candace. You built a business on my grave? That's not true, she whispered. But it is, I said. The words were flat, undeniable. She slumped into her chair. I needed to move on, she said, almost pleading. Like that makes it forgivable, I said. What was I supposed to do? Collapse? No, I said. You were supposed to remember who raised you. Silence swallowed the room, thick and suffocating. I reached into my coat and placed a sealed envelope on her desk. She stared at it as if it might bite. What does it say? That I'm alive, I said, and that I control every cent you hope to inherit. Her fingers tightened around the envelope like it might burn her. I turned toward the door. Wait, she said, voice small, breaking. Why now? Why come now? I paused, hand on the knob, letting the words linger. Because I wanted to look you in the eye, Candace, I said. To see if anything was left of my daughter. I didn't wait for her answer. I didn't look back. And as I stepped into the quiet hallway, leaving the office behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. The power of life reclaimed. The weight of absence lifted. I was here, whole, alive. And for the first time in a long while, no one could erase me. It took her 3 days to respond. Marvin forwarded the email to me. The subject line read, clarification? No greeting, no apology, just a question about the legality of my reappearance and what it meant for the handling of previously assumed assets. Previously assumed. Not my mother, not June, not even her, just assets. Marvin didn't reply immediately. Instead, he called. She's rattled, he said. She's trying to be careful. She's already meeting with a second attorney. She's looking for a workaround. She won't find one, I said. No, he agreed. But she'll keep digging long after the ground is frozen. That night I walked along the river. Recovery had taught me to move slowly. The doctors called it rebuilding muscle memory, but it rebuilt other memories too, the ones I had buried with silence. I remembered holding Candace as a baby, pressing her to my chest after Walter died. The tiny hand that clung to me, whispering, "It's okay, Mommy, I'm here." And now I was here, but she wasn't. Candace had built a life where love was currency. Everything had value only if it could be spent, measured, leveraged. I walked past the riverbank lights reflecting in the water, imagining all the ways she had counted me as nothing. The next day, I went to the bank, not to withdraw, to plant something new. I'd like to open a trust, I told the clerk. In the name of Brianna Claire Mallow, she asked, brow raised. No, I said, my granddaughter. The paperwork took hours. Every clause, every line, every subparagraph I read twice, then added my own. Bri would receive nothing until she turned 25. None while under her mother's financial control. None if Candace filed as her guardian or custodian. She would have to meet with Marvin in person, hear the terms, understand them, sign without pressure. Not a punishment, a warning, a protection. I left the bank lighter not because I had given Bri money, but because I had given her a future her mother could never touch. 2 weeks passed, silence from Candace. But I could feel her like a cold front moving in. A tension across the city, sharp and biting. She posted on her business page, new beginnings, stronger than before. Her eyes didn't look stronger, they looked cornered. Then an email arrived, not from Candace, but from Bri. Subject, is it really you? My breath caught. Grandma, Mom says you're not well. She says things I don't understand, but I heard you came to her office. And I think I saw you weeks ago near the bookstore. If it was you, I just want to say I'm glad. I hope you're okay. Love, Bri. I read it 4 times. Each reading slowed me down, made my pulse steady, I replied. Yes, it was me, and I'm well enough now to know the truth. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. There's more I need to say. Would you meet me? Just you? Love, Grandma June. 3 hours later, tell me where and when. I typed. Tuesday, 4:00 p.m. Cafe with the lemon tarts. Delaney and 3rd. She sent a single heart emoji. Somehow it meant more than any apology Candace had ever given. Bri was already there when I arrived. She sat at the window, eyes lifting every time the door opened. When I stepped inside, she looked straight at me. No shock, no fear, just recognition. Hi, she said. Hi, I echoed. We hugged, awkward at first, then less so. She still wore the silver locket I had given her years ago. You cut your hair, I said. She touched it. Felt like a change. It suits you. We ordered coffee for me, a lemon tart for her. For a long moment we just sat, 2 women bound by blood and a long chain of silence. You look different, she said. I figured. She pushed the lemon curd around her plate. I didn't know, she whispered. After the crash, Mom said everything was confirmed. She said things I don't understand, that she identified the remains. She didn't. I know that now. She looked up, eyes trembling, voice steady. Mom didn't grieve. No, I said. She didn't. She just moved on, sold everything, changed everything. I know. Bri took a breath, then asked quietly, why now? Because I needed to know if I still had family left. Her lips parted slightly. Do you, I said, I still have you. She blinked hard. Mom says you're dangerous, unstable. Convenient, I murmured. She's scared, Bri said. She hides it, but I can see it. She should be. We sat in silence, not uncomfortable, just true. I set something in motion, I said. Legal things, financial things, you need to understand what that means. I'm listening, she said. I explained the trust, the conditions, the protections. She nodded. No panic, no greed. Just quiet understanding. Why me? She asked. Why still give me anything? Because when I was gone, I said, you were the only one who noticed. Tears sprang to her eyes. I missed you, she whispered, so much. But I didn't know how to say it. I know, I said. Before she left, she hugged me again, fully this time. You came back, she whispered. I never left, I said, and this time it felt true. Candace didn't know I was there. She sat on the back patio of a restaurant near the financial district, beneath a heater lamp that cast her skin in a soft orange glow. Across from her sat Deborah Lang, an old college friend turned real estate attorney. I recognized her immediately. I'd asked Marvin to check Deborah's calendar. Strictly business, he'd said. I wanted to see what that meant. I arrived early, slipped into a chair half hidden behind a potted fern. Neutral coat, dark glasses. They never noticed me. Deborah spoke first. Are you sure you want to do this? I've waited a year, Candace said, sipping white wine. She doesn't get to just show up and reclaim everything. She's alive, Deborah said. Candace laughed, small, tight, almost cruel. She looks like someone else, acts like someone else. I don't know what she wants, but I know what I'm not going to do. Deborah leaned in. It's not about want. She's your mother? No, Candace snapped. She was entitled, then she disappeared, now she's a disruption. A disruption, not a mother, not a woman who had survived a plane crash, just a disruption. You don't get to vanish for a year, she continued, then act like nothing's changed. I built everything in that time, the firm, the brand, the sympathy. I'm not undoing it just because she had the nerve to not die. Deborah stared at her. You sound, what, practical? Candace cut in. She gave up her place, I stepped into it. Something shifted in me, not pain, not anger, confirmation. Candace lived in a world where people were only as valuable as their usefulness. She wasn't ashamed, she wasn't grieving, she wasn't conflicted. She was preparing to erase me again, but this time with lawyers. If she sues, Candace said, I'll challenge her competency. If she tries to negotiate, I'll make her look unstable. She sipped calmly. No judge wants to deal with an elderly woman who shows up after being presumed dead. Deborah hesitated. You've thought this through? I've lived this through, Candace said. That was enough. I stood and walked away, quiet, deliberate. I didn't need to hear anything else. Back in my apartment, I sat at the small kitchen table staring at the letter Marvin had prepared weeks ago, addressed to the state bar, detailing Candace's actions during the year I was presumed dead. It had been waiting, like a loaded weapon kept on a mantle. I reached for it, then paused. Instead, I opened a new envelope and wrote to Bri. Tuesday, 10 o'clock a.m. Walk with me, bring your questions, I'll bring the truth. Bri met me by the fountain the next morning. Cool air, fog curling low across the city. We walked without speaking. I saw her, I said. She called me a disruption. Bri didn't flinch. That sounds right. And she said she'd challenge my competency if I tried anything legal. She doesn't want you back, Bri said. Not really, she wants the version of you that stays quiet. She thinks I'm a problem to be managed. She manages everything, Bri said softly. People, outcomes, stories. We reached a bench and sat. She ever try to manage you? I asked. Bri gave a bitter laugh. Every day. We talked quietly, honestly, for the first time as equals. As two women who'd survived the same person in different ways. At one point, Bri said, I'm going to move out. I'm proud of you, I said. She looked relieved and sad at the same time. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. You changed everything, she whispered. No, I said, I just stopped pretending. The second time I walked into Candace's office, I didn't wait. She was pacing mid-call. She hung up the moment she saw me, shock flickering across her face. "You can't just come in here," she snapped. "I can," I said. "You're not well." "I'm better than I've been in years." "What do you want?" she asked. "I've already taken what I want," I said. "I'm just here for the silence that comes after." She stepped back, eyes flashing. "You disappeared," she hissed. "You left me to deal with the wreckage." "You mean the money?" I asked. "The house. The life you built on a mistake you never corrected? I didn't know how to fix it." "You didn't want to." I stepped closer. "You sold my house, you threw out my wedding album, you erased me." "I was surviving." "No," I said. "I survived. You repainted the kitchen." That cut deep. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said. "I remembered everything." Her voice cracked. "What happens now?" "I leave," I said. "You stay and live with what you did." I turned to go. "Wait," she called. "Do you hate me?" I paused. "No," I said. "That would mean I expected something from you." And I left, quietly, like closing a book I'd never open again. Marvin and I finalized everything in a cramped office above a bakery that smelled like burnt sugar. The trust, the foundation, the directives, Bry as my healthcare proxy. Candace received nothing, not even a mention. "You're certain?" Marvin asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded. "I've never seen you this clear." "I was waiting for the noise to stop," I said, "and now I can hear my own voice again." The letter to Candace arrived a week later. Formal notification of estate closure and financial forfeiture. Everything she assumed was hers gone, legally, permanently. There was one line near the end: "No further correspondence is required." She sat in her office alone with that sentence for a long time. She finally opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo, the only one she still kept. Her as a child, me holding her, Walter smiling. She stared at it with an empty expression, not grief, not nostalgia, but recognition. She had won too quickly and lost too thoroughly. I visited the house once more, not to reclaim, but to remember. A new family lived there. Laughter spilled out the door like warm light. I placed a photograph, my own keepsake, on the mantle of what had been mine, a quiet tribute to survival, memory, and the life I had reclaimed. I turned away, letting the sunlight fall on the new family, and walked back to my own life. Free, whole, and finally undisturbed.